Time for a little movie trivia. In what movie did these words occur? Wax on, wax off.
Karate Kid.
Karate Kid. First one, of course. Karate Kid. In that movie, Daniel asked Mr. Miyagi to teach him karate. And so Miyagi said, yeah, I'll do that. So here's what, you gotta follow what I tell you. Without question. Daniel-san said yes. So he put him to work waxing his cars. There's 4 or 5 cars, however many there were. And he said to Daniel, okay, wax on with your right hand, wax off with your left hand. Never interchange those. Okay? And so Daniel thought, well, that's something I have to do to get to practicing karate, or learning karate. So he did all the cars, waxed all the cars. And then he said, okay, got them all done, now teach me karate. And then he said, well, you got to paint this fence. All right? Up and down, never sideways, up and down. And, okay, so he thought, well, I got to paint the fence before he'll teach me karate. And he got frustrated, of course. He said, when are you going to teach me karate? And then, at that point, Mr. Miyagi showed him that all along he had been learning karate. This developed his muscle memory, and these are moves in karate. So, while Daniel thought the goal was to wax the cars and paint the fence, Mr. Miyagi said it was in that process that the real goal was happening, that he was learning how to do karate. I was thinking of that because that, painting a fence or waxing cars doesn't sound like a big deal. But in that setting, something else was occurring. The important stuff was occurring, just in the simple act of putting wax on the car, putting paint on the fence. Get to this gospel of the woman at the well and Jesus. And it's something was happening there. The goal, we think, as we read this, is that she would come to faith through what Jesus' wise words, okay? So that's what we kind of think. It's set up to tell us that Jesus is going to tell her the good news of God's love, and she would believe. But he did that. He had some great words to talk about, to say. But there's something else. First of all, it's the setting. It's a genius of the story. The setting, Jacob's well. Jacob was a common ancestor of the Samaritans and the Jews. He was common ground. So they would both venerate Jacob. So this scene taking place at Jacob's well already sets the stage for being together, common ground, coming together. And it's a well. And, there are not that many wells in the desert, in those dry lands. And everybody came to the well to find life, to find water. And so Jews, Samaritans, everybody else alike needed water. So again, the common ground, common need for water, for life, to bring life. So the setting is that. So Jesus comes, and the disciples are traveling, and then this woman comes to the well. She's a Samaritan, he's a Jew. Now, what do they do? Well, they start talking. And what they talk about? Well, Jesus says, well, I need a drink. Can't get much more simple than that, right? And in that conversation, a few things are happening that we might not catch on. A few things are happening that are very important. First of all, Jesus is talking to a woman. That was a no-no. He shouldn't have been doing that according to Jewish law. Men and women are separate. And he should not be doing that. And she shouldn't be talking to him. She could get stoned for that. But yet, they did it. They kind of stepped across that boundary and said, I'm going to talk to you. Each of them said, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to have a conversation, get some water, have some life. So they did that. They started that. Second of all, Jew, Samaritan. That was a no-no too. They weren't to have anything to do with each other. Jews weren't supposed to use the buckets of the Samaritans because it made them unclean to use utensils of somebody else. Yet, that's what Jesus did. He stepped across that boundary and said, yeah, give me a drink from your bucket. I'm going to, need some water. Okay, very common, kind of ordinary conversation. The intent of talking to another person. So in this discussion, regardless of the great words and things that we're saying, what was happening was life of relationship was happening. Just from these two people taking the effort, crossing some boundaries to talk to each other. Regardless of what the words were, the intent of talking to each other, being with each other, sharing water, spoke loudly, more loudly than the wise words Jesus had to say. That action, that effort to do that on the part of both these people says that this is where we're going to find life, in doing this. And just this simple talking to each other, being in the same spot, conversing, taking the effort to acknowledge each other's presence and validating that. This is what life is about. In the story, Jesus never gets any water. She didn't get any water. And food or anything else. But see, that's another genius part of the story. They found life, but it wasn't in water. It was in that relationship. It was in the coming together on that common ground of being people, of acknowledging that each other is worthwhile. That's where they found life. And that's what convinced, this woman who Jesus was. That she experienced just in that very simple act, with his words too, but with that simple act that, God's love is right here. I don't have to understand the words. It's right here. Experience tells me that. And the words were good too. So this whole story is about, how do we know? How do we know? Where do we find life? Where is it? Water, symbol of life. This story takes place around water, and this story is about bringing life. What does it say to us? Well, it calls us to do the same. So often we get too caught up into the goal. Okay, we have this goal. We think, well, this is it. It's like in our history, our missionaries would go and converting people was the goal, right? Converting. I don't like that word, but converting people. And there are awful things done. Inquisitions, in trying to get to that goal. When really what it's about is not just in trying to get to the goal, but in doing the process, being with people, and proclaiming the good news of God's love in that way. You don't have to convert people. You can share with them that care, concern, and love. And they will understand. It's not the first time people experience that when we tell them that. We get so caught up in things like that and saying, okay, how do you belong? Well, you follow these rules. Well, how about just kind of talking to each other, listening to each other? That speaks more loudly of belonging than anything else. In our RCIA, the process of people becoming part of our church, that's why it's not just a kind of baptism or confirmation and, okay, now they're part of our community. It's the kind of process of learning about our church, our religion. It's kind of an excuse. It's kind of an excuse. We call that the goal, right? You learn about Catholic faith and then you become part of it. That's kind of really an excuse to walk together through the process. Walk together, and in that process we become community. And so the confirmation of baptism or whatever it is actually, the kind of the celebration of what has happened already. See, that's really kind of what it's about, us human beings. But it's hard to do. Why would we want to walk with those people we don't like? Why would we want to walk with those people who are so different than us? Why can't they kind of do something? Why can't they change and become this, right? And we kind of try to force them to do that. Well, force, whatever kind of force we use, well, that's one way we think we can get to the goal of making those people do what they're supposed to. But, it doesn't work most of the time. But what does help, what does work, if we do the process, we walk with people. And that creates the belonging, that creates the bonding, that creates the unity. That's really what we're looking for. So this story kind of helps us if we listen closely, kind of helps us to kind of redo our kind of way of thinking. How do we become one? How do we come together? Well, it's pretty much in the basic, sitting down, having a meal with each other. That's why dinner for 8 is such a great thing. Talking, just being. Don't have to have big agendas either. So we gather here during this time of Lent to ask ourselves kind of how are we doing that? How are we promoting and proclaiming the Word of God, the gospel message, and probably not just in words, but in our actions, and being with each other, and just listening to telling each other they're worth my time and effort, just the very simple things. It's not rocket science. So we come to ask ourselves how we're doing that, how we can continue to do that as a parish, as families, as individuals. Because we know it's in finding that common ground, it's in finding that common life in our midst. That is what we're about. And that is kind of what we are doing this Lent. Let's continue to kind of find that life and that love in the Word of God and how we share it with each other. And how we share that in kind of caring, loving each other. Now I call forward our candidate.